Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Join Stewart Heath for down-to-earth conversations with top professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders who have a story to tell. Let's get rolling.
Hello, everyone. This is Stewart Heath, your host of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Welcome back for another episode. We're very excited today to have Candy Messer with us. She is from the pointy part of Tennessee, and that's the extreme East Tennessee for people who don't know that. She's had a company for quite a long time, and we're excited to hear her stories in business and life and things that she's learned. So, Candy, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here today.
Wonderful. Okay, we're jumping right in, Candy. When you think back over your career, was there a game changer? Did you, when you were 10 years old, did you always just want a bookkeeping company? And so how did you get here? And was there a big game changer that put you on this path versus where you thought you might be going?
Sure. I actually never thought I would be an entrepreneur. It was not something that I had really been exposed to very much. And so I was going to school. I, majored in business management, of course, had accounting classes because of that. So I was exposed to it, but hadn't thought this is what I would do. And one of the careers that I had after retail, so I did retail from the time I was, a teenager until after I had two children. I went into working for a publishing company, and I was a full charge bookkeeper handling everything related to the finances. And somebody knew what I did. And she said, well, I help my husband with his company, and I will pay the bills, and I will, invoice the customers, but I hate reconciling and doing the financials. Will you please help? And she basically asked me for a few months. And I was thinking, well, do I really want to, have to start my own business and do all of these things? And she really begged me for so long. And I finally gave in and said, okay, I'm going to help. But then I had to get a business license and a home operating permit, and I had to buy the software, and, I had to get all these things that were costing me money. And it wasn't really going to make sense financially to have one person that I was helping and having to pay for all these expenses. So I thought, well, on the side of my real job, I'll just help a couple more clients, right? And so that's what I did. I worked my, regular job, and then I would go once a month or so to these clients to get their information, or, go to the office and do the work and then leave. And after about a year and a half, my husband said, quit your job, focus on your business. People really like what you're offering, and you could do much better, than just working for someone else. But that was scary, right? To give up that paycheck. Right. But he convinced me. And so that's what I did. So I technically started 2002. That's when I finally agreed, to help this client. And then in mid 2004 is when my husband finally said, all right, it's time to just do your own thing. So I did both for about a year and a half.
Yeah, that's back when there were very few cloud-based options, and I was in the business at that time, had my own CPA firm, and so you literally had to go to them. They might could send you a thumb drive or something, and you load it up, you back it up, but it was just easiest just to go. I remember this is probably 2005, 2006, but. Between Franklin and Nashville and Murfreesboro, I had these three clients that were each had these problems. One of them was fraud, and one of them was just incompetence, and one of them was just behind. And that was when I realized, the only real difference between fraud and incompetence is intent. Because it was still, but I was going around to all these different things, and we actually created we got a copy of QuickBooks, and we put it into the cloud. This is before they ever came out with QuickBooks Online and stuff and we did that for several years. So I feel for you. It was just like all I was doing was being on the road. So right. So 2002, so about 20 years ago when you started that, 2004, Um, so you started with 2 clients, is that right?
Yeah, so how I even got additional clients was I had this first one, and then someone I knew, our kids went to the same school, and we were both on the board of the school. She was also a bookkeeper. And so I just happened to mention to her, by the way, my husband encouraged me kind of to do my own thing as well. And, I have these couple clients, and she said, "Oh, well, I have a client that I need to hand off. And, it's taking a lot of my time. It's a little bit complicated because they have 2 businesses, but they're intermingled." So she had given me a client, and then a CPA that, did my taxes said, "Oh, I have clients that need some help because their stuff is a mess." Right. And so
Yeah.
that's how I started really building the business, was really word of mouth referrals.
Were you disciplined in the fact of making sure that you got your rate? I was horrible at, I would take on all kinds of businesses only to realize later, like, I'm losing money doing this. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, was that hard in the beginning?
I didn't even know what I should charge really as an independent bookkeeper. Of course, I knew what I made as a bookkeeper in a company, and that's different,
Not
of
the same
course,
thing at
because
all.
they
Yeah.
cover, expenses. So I really had no idea. So really, the person who kept asking me to help her, she's the one who said, "Well, this is what I paid my bookkeeper before." And so I was like, "Okay," so that's what I took at first. And being just on my own, I didn't have an office with overhead and employees and all of that yet. I thought, "Oh, well, this is actually pretty good." But I didn't really understand everything that was going to go into running the business and all of the costs and everything at first that I would incur. And was it worth it or was it not worth it? So over time, obviously, I had to change my pricing. And that took a little bit of just the hard knocks almost, right? Like realizing and then not necessarily seeing my value at first. And, I had someone who looked down his nose at me one time too, because he said, "Well, what makes you think you're going to be good at this?" And so I thought to myself, well, let's see, I have the education. I have been doing this for a while, but I didn't have the CPA. I didn't want to be a CPA, but he was basically telling me because I wasn't a CPA, I wasn't going to be able to do this job well. And so I had to kind of overcome some of those self-doubts as well as other people maybe portraying that to me. And then over time, I just had to realize I have to be able to charge what I need to charge to make it profitable so that I could pay all the expenses, hire staff, do all of those things too. So, and I still don't think it's perfect. I probably am still charging less than I should, but it definitely has changed. So it's not where it was when I first began.
So you've been doing it for a while. Is there a bump in the road that you might have hit in business that you can tell us about and how you were able to navigate through it?
I've had quite a few, as probably
We,
anyone in
we
business
all
in
do,
length of
yeah.
time has. Um, I think I'm actually a loyal person. I'm very trusting. So one of the things that came up once was, I was leaving periodically to, meet with a potential client or go to a networking event. And I trusted that the staff was, working and doing what they were supposed to be doing. And later on, I found out someone that I had hired pretty quickly after I hired her, she was saying she was going to give her notice. And I was asking why. And she's like, "Well, I don't really want to say anything, but it made me start figuring out there was something going on." And finally, we found out what was happening was one of the people there would basically, if I was out for a meeting, she would then leave, take an extended break, go shopping or do whatever while she was technically on the clock, and then would come back when she knew I was coming back, and then was basically intimidating the other people to say, "Don't say anything, or I'll, say things about you," or whatever. So she did end up leaving. She still didn't really want to tell me, but I had a friend that came in. We started talking to the staff and we finally figured out what was happening. And then I felt very betrayed because I had put trust in someone. I'm, doing all I can to help them grow even in their position. And so that took me a while to really overcome that hurt and feelings of betrayal because I did trust. And I've had that happen more
Well,
than
basically
once.
stealing from you. So,
Yes. And I have had it happen more than once with, especially now because of a remote team. All my team is now remote, where back then I was in an office. And so that's been the hard part of still managing a remote team too, and hoping that I'm hiring people who are trustworthy, but I'm not sitting in the same room with them and being able to monitor that. But things have come out. Sometimes other people find out kind of what's happening. And those are people of integrity who say, by the way, I just found out, this person was doing this. And then we've had to approach those staff members. So I think that's a recurring thing I've had happen a few times that I've had to deal with, and still be able to say that I could trust the people I'm hiring. And hopefully, that trust isn't broken. But that's one of the challenges for sure.
How have your services evolved? Are you still just sticking to, monthly bookkeeping, or maybe it's more frequent than that in financial statements, or are you offering other services now?
Yeah, when I first started, it was just bookkeeping. Then we became an actual payroll company. So I don't run payroll through another company, like ADP or Paychex or something like that. We actually are a payroll company. So we added that service. And of course, like sales tax and 1099s, like all the compliance things, we did all that. And then when the employee retention credit came along, I actually had created a how-to video to just demonstrate for anyone who found that video how to do it themselves. But some were uncomfortable doing that. So they came to me and they said, can you please help? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. I can help you with that. And so we had helped many, many, many people, be able to claim that as well. And my intention was really just educate and let them, be able to do it without even having to pay anyone.
Educational marketing is always great. You show it to them, and then they go, I want to do that. So
Exactly.
they hire you.
Exactly. And then finally, the most recent thing, it's not necessarily what someone might think of a bookkeeping company doing, but in the long run, I think money and time a lot of times go together, of how they pair up. But I became certified as a clockwork trainer, which is, I don't know if you've heard of Mike Michalowicz and the books he's written. He wrote the book Clockwork, which is operational efficiency and teaching you how to take a 4-week vacation from your business where you're completely unplugged and it runs without you. And so I became certified in that program. So the other title they call is like a fractional COO, if people want to kind of think of it that way, where we can actually help you figure out what should you be getting off of your plate. How can you be doing that? How can you actually take time away and be completely unplugged? Because most of the time as entrepreneurs, we might go technically on vacation, but we're checking emails. We're still taking calls. We might be reaching out to a customer. We might be handling a problem, that comes up. And the goal is really have that company be able to do that. Your staff be able to be empowered and make decisions and be able to handle those things. So that's the newest service that I have available as well.
That's interesting. That'd be fascinating, given your other story. It was like, first thing you got to be able to do that is have a staff that you've got real trust in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to me, staffing is the biggest problem in business, and it's always something, and so many people are short staffed right now, in hiring the right people, but a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm not saying that I am saying this about me, but a lot of them are, we sort of got a hero complex. We love to swoop in and solve the problem, and which convinces ourselves we can never step away from our business. But and then after 20 years, you're like, oh, why am I so exhausted? So.
Right.
So how do you stay current? And what are the topics that you want to stay current on? Are you a book person, videos, YouTube channel, podcasts? What to stay on top of your game, and you've got a staff, so you've got a real business, and you're a leader. How do you stay current so that you can be the best that you can be?
Well, I'd say one of the things is really being on newsletters for certain organizations that have a lot of the updated information. So whether that's the IRS, I get emails from the IRS. Even though I'm not a CPA, I do have the CPA Practice Academy. So a lot of times they're sending out information as well. Some of those industry type magazines or newsletters, so I could stay up to date on what's happening. Like, for instance, the beneficial ownership information reporting that, there's been so much going on with that where you have to file. Yeah. No, you don't. No, you have to file again. No, now you don't. It's on hold again. Yeah. I mean, even this week, there's been a change. So it's easier, instead of me having to figure out all the time, like, what's happening? Do I need to search? Like, being on those newsletter lists where that will just come back out. FinCEN sent a little thing that said, we're now putting this on hold. So that's one of the things that I use to keep up to date on things. I do enjoy podcasts. I do listen to other podcasts, not always specifically for my industry though, but just following other people who are in business, or sometimes even just on a personal side where they're sharing stories. Like, I like to hear some of those inspirational things too. So that also helps me kind of just not be in the day-to-day numbers all the time, right? But having other things that I listen to as well. So, but in terms of the industry, I would say probably the newsletters is the most important for me.
How much client work are you actually still doing these days?
Generally not too much, unless there's something like, if there were like a cleanup that for some reason maybe my staff can't handle right now because of maybe a capacity issue. If someone comes and they're like, I need to get this done ASAP, I might step in to do that. Or, if someone is on a vacation or things like that. But I have pretty much all of the day-to-day, the bookkeeping and the payroll and all of that work being handled by my staff. And then I can help do additional trainings. I'm trying to actually build the skill level of staff that I have. There's people who come in who are newer, and I'm trying to teach, different things to them and give them additional skills. I'm also working on, like I said, clockworking my own business, where I keep putting out maybe different tools for my staff to be able to handle things that maybe they weren't quite comfortable, doing. I'm still talking with a lot of potential clients or vendors, periodically answering questions. But even my operations manager handles a lot of the prospect calls, creating all of the proposals, because I don't want to be the bottleneck in my company, right? If everything has to come through me, there's a problem, right? Yeah. And so if I need to step away, I'm at that part of my life where I have aging parents and a mother-in-law who's, potentially going to need some assistance. I need to be able to step away if something happens, or whenever I decide maybe to sell my company. Nothing like that is on the horizon that I know of at this point. But if I do want to sell, is someone going to want to buy my business if I have to be in the business 40, 50, 60 hours a week? That's not what someone's looking to buy. They're looking to buy an investment where it's, turnkey. So those are the things that I'm working on too, is just making sure that I can continue to offload tasks from my own lap and then focus on other things that will continue to grow the company.
Spoken like a true leader. Yeah, you're referring to the concepts in the old book, The E-Myth, and over the years, as I practiced, and like, yes, you have a company, but really what you have is you own your own job. And it's a massive, paradigm shift in an owner's brain, and not everybody gets it,
Right.
Just because you're a good plumber doesn't mean you can run a plumbing company. So
that's true. Well, one of the statements that Mike McCallum made in the book Clockwork was, your job is not to do the work. Your job is to be able to create jobs for others to be able to do the work. Yeah. And that's very important for us to really consider. That is, we shouldn't really be doing all of the day-to-day tasks. Let's have someone that we can offer employment to, that they can do those, and then we can continue to grow the company.
But Candy, I can do it better and faster.
And that is short-term thinking too, as well. Because again, yes, it's going to take more time up front to train someone. But again, no one has like all this knowledge from birth, right? Too, like, we didn't understand it all either right away. We had to learn it, because there's this concept too, no one's going to know it as well as I do, or no one's going to care as much as I do. And a lot of times that's not the truth, right? And so once you said earlier, it's like a hero complex.
That second one, in my experience, tends to be, I've been trying to hire an accounting manager for probably going on 2 years. And 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 I'm a CPA, but that's not what I do anymore. And I've got it all laid out in our project manager says, do this on this day, da, 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 da. And through at least 6 different hires, nobody reads. Yeah. So I'm just really poor at hiring, is my conclusion. But do you have the staff complement that you want right now? Are you still hiring? And the one thing about this field is it's incredibly shorthanded. Not as many people have been entering this field, in the last 15 years. So how have you managed to amass the staff that you have?
A lot of the ones that have come to me in the recent years to have been referred by someone I know, so somebody knew I was looking for something and said, oh, I know someone that I think would be great in that position. So that's been really helpful. I had one recent hire that just found out about, he came to work with us in maybe the last 6 months, found out about it through the state of Tennessee. I had posted on their job board. And he's in a different state, but somehow the Tennessee job board showed up on the job board that he was looking in his state. And so I hired him that way. But really, a lot of it has been just referrals. And that to me has been one of the best things, because then people kind of know who I am and what I'm looking for, know the person that they're referring as well. And so it has been a better match sometimes than just like a blind hire that later on you might find out that maybe a resume was enhanced, or, some of the times that they might do well in an interview, but then maybe not so much, on a day-to-day basis too. So I think that's one of the harder things to do too, is the hiring, and definitely the firing when you have to do that. Not as much fun. That's one of the things that my personality doesn't like conflict either, right? And so
I don't. I'm certainly not afraid of conflict, but when it comes to somebody who, you've been with, you tend to think of them as family. And I always just like, well, it's me, it's not you. I mean, it's which is not really the case, but yeah, I actually hate doing it. But so that's interesting. I mean, you've gotten most of it through referrals. That hasn't worked for me in my region in years. Nobody wants to tell you about a good accountant that they know, because they want to keep them to themselves. So
right. Well, I have a fully remote team now. So originally when I started my business, I lived in California and everyone was in California. Now, like, I literally have people in multiple states. So it's not even like in this neighborhood, someone's afraid to refer someone because then they won't work for them, or something like that. So that has actually been a positive too. But I also in the past have had relationships with like some trade colleges, where if someone's taking some accounting classes or things like that too, and they find a student who they think is excellent, they would reach out to me and say, I don't know if you have an open position, but here's someone that I think that would be really good. And that had worked out quite a few times for me as well. So I just actually had a conversation with someone yesterday at a local college here saying, this is what I've had in the past. I would love to build a relationship again. And that's what I'm going to do. And hopefully I'll be able to bring in someone who's maybe just learning some basics, wants some real world experience, and then also be able to grow them over time into those positions that I need in my company.
How many folks you have on staff now?
Right now I have 8.
That's a real company. That's really good.
Thank you.
So let's pivot to the prosperity section of our podcast. We've talked about growth. Prosperity is, which I always like to ask my entrepreneurs, essentially, what are you doing with your investable cash? And again, we're not asking for account numbers or dollar amounts or anything like that.
Right.
But everybody has, and most entrepreneurs, are wired to develop multiple streams of income. Yeah, there's the one that their job, the business they created, and then others they want other passive. Some people, some entrepreneurs just keep creating businesses.
Right.
What do you do with your investable dollars? What do y'all do?
Well, part of it, of course, is reinvesting back into my own staff too, and being able to teach them, other things so they could continue to grow in their own position. So someone who I hire into an admin position can actually become something else. So for instance, my operations manager, she was hired a little more than a couple of years ago in my company as the administrative assistant, right? And handled the emails and the phone calls and, basic paperwork and things like that. And now, like I said, she's my operations manager, and she has had the opportunity to really grow in her position and learn more things. And I actually had enrolled her into like a leadership program. So she was able to build more confidence as well in that position. Not only me saying kind of how I handle things, but also having where it was like an actual training and other people in the cohort that they were able to talk to each other and say what they were learning and how they were implementing things. So that's one of the things that I think is important, because if we're developing our team and making them feel important too, they're going to want to be around for a while, and we're not going to have that turnover and having to spend the money on hiring and training and all of that again on new staff. One of the other things I do too, again, I like Mike Michalowicz and the books that he shares. And one of his books is Profit First, right? And so you have different accounts that you have your money in, right? So you've got your profit that you put money away for. I have put money away for taxes to make sure I have plenty when the tax bill comes. I have to make those estimated payments. There's no worry about cash flow or anything on that too. So I do follow that process as well. And then right now I'm just thinking like, what other things could I be doing? Obviously I create content and I have a podcast, and, I've created a course in the past through a company that's been on LinkedIn that did really well for that company, right? Like I actually gave my knowledge for a very small fee and they made a lot off of that. But I thought, there's a need out there for more information. So maybe I should be putting out some course material too, that is not just a free video that I have training videos on YouTube. I've got lots of videos on there too, but maybe a more in-depth course on a specific topic. So thinking about putting that together, and that could be another stream of income. So I have a lot of ideas.
Training for clients or for other bookkeeping companies, or what are you thinking?
Actually, I've been thinking about that too. Should I also have things where I could be teaching like up and coming bookkeepers too? Like this is kind of the thing that you would want to be implementing in your business to create a successful business. But really more for finding, like, maybe it's related to like payroll specifically and teaching all of the things that are involved with payroll as an employer. What do you need to know? Right. So you need to understand the labor laws in your area. You need to understand what is considered regular time, overtime, who's exempt, who's non-exempt. Like there's so many things when it comes to payroll that we get so many questions. So I was like, well, why not take that and put it into some type of content that might be able to help? I'm not sure. I haven't done all of that yet, but it's things I ponder, right? And see, should I go this route or not?
Yeah, I'm a content creator as well, and never thought I would be. I'm really just an accountant, a crusty old CPA, but my brain's always working on, oh, I could do a post on this, or I could do it. We've now got 2 newsletters going and stuff like that. So, and I do enjoy the creative process of it, but it takes some time.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, all right. Last question. Candy, if you were mentoring someone or somebody just wanted to follow in your footsteps, what one piece of advice would you give them?
Oh, goodness. I would say for one, you have to balance your heart and your head, right? Because I have done things because I was like, oh, I just love my clients and, okay, well, they're having a little bit of a struggle right now. So I'll just do this for them for no cost or, things. And then we're giving away our value. And then we actually, I think, are seen as less valuable in their eyes, even though we think it's the opposite. And so I think we don't always have to just be hard and fast on the rules, but don't give away so much because we're being too kind, right? We still need to value our time and resources and everything too, so that we don't become overwhelmed and exhausted. So we need to be as important as our clients.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I was, when you're younger, you just got a different perspective. You haven't lived long enough, and you do something for somebody and then they perceive zero value in it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
It would be different if you had given them a $1,000 check. You know, they understand what that means. But if you gave this happened to me over and over and over. And it was, I'll never forget the one guy that I was able to, the timing was perfect, but we got him an S election on like the last week of February when he was just about to sell his company. And so we turned into an S corporation, and I remember the number because it hurt so bad. I saved him $250,000 in taxes.
Wow. By
that one move. And then he took his taxes to somebody else to do. I'm just like, what? Well, they were cheaper. They're a few dollars cheaper. And all I did was bill him for an hour for the time that I thought of, and I should have billed him, 10% of the savings. But I was just trying to help my client.
Right.
So I've got dozens of those stories, which is part of the reason I'm not in that business anymore. But you've got to value your own stuff, and your guy says profits first, and one of my Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, just pay yourself first. When you're comfortable and you got what you need, then you can take care of everybody else around you. So anyway, good stuff. I like that. Balancing the heart and the head. So that might just have become the title of this episode. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time. Hats off to a real entrepreneur. I understand that entrepreneurship is a little bit like mental illness. So, sometimes we can't help ourselves. But thank you for taking the time. I know that in your position, you got little time. We thank you for sharing yours with us.
Well, thank you, Stewart, for the invitation. I enjoyed being here.
Candy, if anybody wants to reach out to you, having watched this episode, how would they do that?
So you can find our website, abandp.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well. And I do have a podcast as well called Biz Help for You.
Okay. We'll make sure all those links get into the show notes, make it easy for people to click. Again, thanks for the time. And to our audience, thank you for watching this episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. Be sure to come back and watch our next one. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. If you'd like to be a guest, visit growthgraceprosperity.com/guest. We'd love to hear your story.